Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. And today we're going to get into the topic of discussion in regards to, so everyone heard the whole thing going around about Trump and the whole child support thing. Now, I heard after the fact that was just a rumor in regards to women who have men on child support. They are not going to be able to claim the children on taxes. Now, I don't know if that's going to be true or not, or if it's just something that's thrown out there. But nonetheless, it brought up a good question that I wanted to, or at least topic of discussion I want to kind of address in light of that, which is child support too much? And I'm going to answer right off the bat. It is too much. With the amount that people pay in general is too much. And I'm going to later on dive into why I think that's even a thing that they even do that. For many reasons, actually, but I'm going to get into one particular aspect of it, of why I think they do that. But that's a little more universal. But as far as it being too much, I'm going to tell you right off the bat that yes, child support is way too much. There are a lot of people who pay, I think I hear that the percentage of child support is something like 20%. So I'm not 100% sure exactly the percentage. That's what I've heard thrown around. But essentially, so I just Googled just to kind of see, and this is what it is in, this might apply to certain locations, but what I'm seeing is a rough percentage kind of scale when I Googled it of one child being 17% of the combined income of you and the other person, which I don't think makes sense, because why are you combining the other person's income and that person is not even contributing to the child support? That makes no sense. But essentially it's saying one child 17%, two children are 25%, three children are 29%. So even though the percentage gets lower as, on scale with more children, nonetheless, the overall number goes up. But let's just assume that people are looking at somewhere between one child and two children. Once you start getting three children, this and that, I'm sure it gets crazy, but we'll say one child and two children are 25%. One child is 17%. So let's just say 20%, cut it down the middle in general. This is crazy because, you have a bunch of different combinations that can make that very tricky and a lot. So say if it's a situation where you might make some money and the other person makes no money, this is also a range of the percentage. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, that there's a range that they have where they can go up to that amount and sometimes they can go a little bit lower. And obviously, if that person makes less money, or the judge just like you, they may just go on the higher end. But nonetheless, let's say hypothetically you make 50,000 and the other person makes 50,000. And so combined, you guys make 100,000. So the 20% of that would obviously be $20,000, but this is before tax, and that's what's crazy. So what happens is that 20,000 is taking 20,000. Then now what happens is you break down your 50,000, get taxed. So some people, I don't know what taxes across the board. Some people I feel get taxed more than others, just because of depending on the occupation that they do, not necessarily because of what tax bracket they fall in, but I could be wrong about that. I'm not an expert when it comes to the taxes, but essentially, so say if you make $50,000 on your share and you bring home, we'll say you're getting taxed somewhere close to like 30% of that, because I know income tax is a lot of times. You got the state, you got the city, all this kind of stuff going on. Let's say you're bringing home, we'll say roughly 30,000 of that, we'll say, is cash in your pocket. 30,000 a year out of that 50,000. So let me just break up my calculator so I can kind of do this math. So that 30,000 divided by, on a monthly basis, is 2,500. So now you're bringing home 2,500 after taxes a month. Okay. Out of that, we're going to calculate how much 20% of that would be. I'm sorry, $20,000 would be. So essentially roughly $1,600. So pretty much if you make $50,000 and you're bringing home something about $30,000 cash after tax, you get $2,500 a month, and 1,600 of that, we're just going to round it off to 1,500. 1,500 of that is being sent to child support, which means almost half of your check, just shy of half of your check, is being taken away. And most people who pay child support will be able to relate, because they'll probably say, yes, about half my money a month, or maybe just shy of half my money a month, is being taken away. And put in the comments if that's about the gauge of what you are paying when it comes to your children and child support. Is it roughly about a little less than half, or somewhere about like 40% of what you make a month is going to child support? And so that's why I'm coming off the calculation there, which is insane, because essentially, if you, like I said, going back to my example, if you make 2,500 and 1,500 is gone, you have 1,000 left to work with. No, I'm sorry. So I'm off on my measurements. I mean, it's actually a little bit more than 50% off my calculation that I'm coming up with. And some people might say, yeah, like that might be somewhere in the range. Maybe it's a little under 50%, maybe it's a little more than 50%. But the point is that it can be a lot. The point is, it's still a lot. However, even if my math is a little off, but like I said, people can post in the comments on relating to, that being the situation and how much it is, but just knowing that it's a lot. I hear a lot of stories, there's a lot, is a lot. The thing about it though, is that much money is not needed to take care of a kid. And this is the interesting part about it. So like I said, at the end of the video, we're going to go into why I think and theorize they do this. There's a couple of different reasons. I could go to a bunch of different reasons why they do it in terms of, different backgrounds, different this and that, all these other kind of things. I'm just going to focus on one particular reason why I think is an aspect of why they do it. But I wanted to break down how much is it really to take care of kids on a rough basis. Now, kids are not very expensive. A lot of people get the idea that kids are expensive. They're really not expensive. But the first thing you have to understand and know is you have to want kids for them not to be expensive. If you don't want kids, then they're going to feel expensive because you're trying to live two lives. You're trying to live your single life, and you're trying to live a family person life, and that doesn't work. Now, first of all, obviously, taking care of kids is a lot cheaper if you are with the person. But when you think about that person, that other person, your partner, whether you're the woman or the male's perspective, whatever the case is, 9 times out of 10, it's the woman who has the kids and puts the man on child support. But let's just assume it could be the reverse for anyone out there if this example applies to you. When you're living together, often you have where either one income is taking care of the entire home, or you have, one person might make a little bit less, but nonetheless, they're both combining their income and they're surviving together, and it's not really an issue. What you'll notice in those lifestyles when people are together, especially when in that situation, sometimes you don't have to pay for child care because you are flip-flopping, between which parent is watching. Like maybe you work in the daytime and your partner works at nighttime. You guys switch up, or however you guys do it. Maybe your kids are old enough to the point where both of you work in the day, but you send them off to school, and then there's enough time for you to go to work afterwards, and maybe someone else picks them up afterwards, maybe a nanny or something like that, and then, or their grandma or something like that, and then you're able to, after you get off work at 5 o'clock, there was only 2 hours where maybe they were picked up by a family member, or they stayed to an after school program, and then now you guys get them at 5 o'clock. My point is, when two people are together in the real world, you're not paying for child care. So that's often like a thing that's not there. But keep in mind, when you have even if you guys split up, right, and then someone's paying child support, if things were done the correct way, you would be able to have the other parent just pick them up, and they'd work together seamlessly. So that way, even though you guys aren't living together, the one who's available, say the one who works in the afternoon, would get them ready in the daytime, and the one who works in the morning would go pick them up after school. So you would have some kind of thing like that. So my point to that is, childcare is either not needed because if it was done correctly like that, in terms of like some childcare, what I mean by that is someone watching your kid, or most of the time, the person who has the kids, and most of the time, like I said, it's the woman, so we're just going to say it like that. Most of the time, the woman is not going to pay for childcare. 9 times out of 10, even if they have child support, they're going to have family member watch the kids, and they're going to pocket that money. So most of the time, that's not even really a factor in terms of saying childcare. Most of the time, to be honest with you, and that's usually a fact across the board. So when you start really breaking it down, how much is it to really take care of kids? Now, I'm going to tell you firsthand from my own experience, and a lot of people will either agree with this or disagree with this. But like I said, if you want to have kids, you're going to see that the expense is different than if you didn't want to have kids. Why? Because you are integrating their life with yours and yours with theirs. So I'm going to give you an example. Now, me particularly, I have 2 sons, and my 2 sons are twins. So I had them at the same time, meaning that the boatload of the expenses are double in the beginning. So what I'm going to give you as a breakdown for the most costly things is really as expensive as you get because it's 2 at the same time. So for example, formula, in those first, that time frame of like from the beginning all the way to like, say, I forget exactly when they kind of get off of that, but they say that they should be drinking formula at least for the first 6 months before they can go to like regular milk or other things like that and start eating like, soft, solid foods and stuff like that for the most part. And they're still going to want to drink milk, but at that point you could just give them like regular, regular store-bought milk. It doesn't have to be formula. So 6 months is formula. At formula, what I found, you can go to Costco or any of your kind of big brand stores like that, Costco, BJ, Sam's Clubs, any of those. You might find them at Walmart too. I was able to get a 4-pack of the jumbo formulas for about $85. So that usually lasted roughly, I want to say about a month to sometime maybe 3 weeks. So it's like about $85 every 3 weeks to a month. So we're just going to round that off and just say 100. So if it lasted 3 weeks, we're just going to say like $100 would have been the covering the difference of that extra time frame. We'll just do that just for argument's sake. Matter of fact, we'll round it up to 125. So 125 for that. Diapers were about $35 every 3 weeks. So I'm just going to round that up once again to like about 50. So we're going to gauge ourselves now at $175. Wipes were $20 a month. So we'll say we're about in that $200 range. So about $200 a month for newborn twins in that case. So you would figure that if you have one kid, it's half that price, probably $100 a month. Really not that expensive. Across the board, I don't care who you are, for a whole person, that's not that expensive, especially when you consider, like I said, if you want children, you're going to get rid of the things that end up costing us so much money. Like you have your Starbucks coffee every day. You don't need a Starbucks coffee every day. You could just have your coffee from home. When you go to the store, your big brand store to go get diapers and all that, go buy your coffee, go buy your everything. You become that. Anyone who's familiar with being a family person and shopping in those big brand stores, you buy everything there. So at that point, you're not just buying a couple things, you're buying everything. You're buying your breakfast, your dinner, your condiments, your toiletries. You're buying all that stuff. So at a certain point, it's really not costing you that much because all these things you buy it in bulk are lasting you like weeks and weeks. So you're not going all the time. So my point is, a child, for the most part, 2 children cost, this is my real life experience, about $200 a month. Really not all that bad. Somewhere in that ballpark, give or take. Now, when it comes to them getting a little bit older and you get to toddler range. So one, you're going to have your easy food stuff on hand. So you're going to have things like, and kids love this stuff. So you get, once again, from those big brand stores, you get a big box of like waffles because they love waffles. You might have a cereal. They might like a particular cereal. My kids loved Cheerios at the time, and Fruit Loops, but also loved waffles. They obviously, you can get yourself different types of veggies. They're gonna like one of them. So whatever one they like, focus on that. Still not that big of a deal. Not that expensive. My kids happen to love nuggets, and they also happen to love fish. So I'd buy that at Costco as well. And then obviously on the nights where you fix like a full dinner, not something frozen that you're not going to whip up, you could do the whole thing, make a meal, pasta, this and that, whatever the case is. But the point is you always had your backup, maybe frozen stuff that, on a pinch, because kids really just love those kind of like easy, simple things. That's just how kids are. When they get older, you get that taste for more other things, and they would like a good cooked meal every now and then. But sometimes, little kids get picky. For those who don't know, and if you do know, then you know what I'm talking about. They get picky, and so you revert back to your little favorites. You want to give them, healthy stuff, but still, you might give them some nuggets with some vegetables. Obviously for breakfast, maybe some waffles. Give them the cereal, whatever the case is. My point is that even then, not only is it not that expensive, but two, if you eat the same things they eat or learn to eat what they eat because you're in a pinch, because half the time if they don't finish their food, you got to clean the plate anyway. You start realizing it's still, once again, not that expensive. You can buy a full bag of nuggets from Costco for like $10. You could buy a 72 pack of waffles from Costco for about $10. I think it rose up to maybe about 12, I'm not sure. You can buy a bag of mixed vegetables for like $10 or whatever the case is. Or even when you're buying fresh vegetables and fresh fruits from Costco and BJ's, they're really not that expensive, and they'll last you, the fresh ones will last you a whole week before you have to buy them again. And you can probably buy an assortment of different types of vegetables or fruits for probably like $15 or $20. More than you'll be able to eat before they go bad. So yeah. My point to it is that it's really not that expensive. Clothes, because in the beginning, you really don't need to worry too much about clothes when they're babies. You don't have to have a lot. Most people, family members, are going to probably buy it for you anyway. But if you had to buy, clothes when they're young, toddlers, it's really not a big deal, because most of the time between you changing the diapers and them, babies don't really smell like that. You can kind of have them wear the same onesies for like a good amount of time, unless that onesie gets soiled. But the point is, you could have probably a good like 10 like onesies, and you're good when they're below 6 months. After that, you literally, when they start to become toddler age, go to Old Navy, go to one of these spots, like go to Walmart, go wherever, buy yourself some jeans. You literally could go with jeans. Can't go wrong with jeans and sweats. Now, I can't be familiar with girls because I have two boys, but jeans, sweats, get a little belt, one of those kind of fabric ones that you can adjust as they grow old. All that stuff will last them like at least like a good year. And this is for two kids, so obviously it's gonna be cheaper if you have one kid. But if you have two kids, the luxury of it is that the one kid who's bigger, his hand-me-downs can go to the other one who's smaller. But the point is, you could probably get away with literally spending for two kids, I'm giving this budget for two kids, about probably somewhere around $300 to maybe $500 a year for their clothes, because you really don't have to get a whole bunch, because they're going to outgrow, and you don't have to have a whole bunch of crazy things. I remember buying a couple of nice, polo shirts that were, maybe I caught them on sale, Old Navy, maybe about, I want to say somewhere about like $8 per shirt. I bought a whole handful of those. I bought a whole handful of like almost like thermal type of like long sleeve shirts, something similar to like a thermal type of style, that they were colored. So they looked like regular, just long sleeve shirts, but they were nice, throw over, very easy. Bought those for around the same price. Bought a whole handful of them, a good amount. Jeans, get a couple of blue jeans, light blue jeans, dark blue jeans. You know how it is with jeans. You can wear them all the time. Just have a nice, good, like maybe 3 pair, just so that if they get dirty, you wash the other one. But other than that, jeans is not a big deal. Re-wear your jeans all the time. As long as you change your underwear, you're good. Most of us adults don't even really, go through the jeans like that. You have a nice pair of jeans that last you a couple of years, whatever. It's not a big deal. Have a couple of sweats too. My point is, you could probably spend about $500 on two kids if you budget and shop well. Don't be buying those crazy name brand stuff. You don't need it because your kid's gonna outgrow it really soon. It doesn't cost that much. $500 maybe for the year. Going back to the point that I'm getting at, you're already looking at budgets that come nowhere close to like say $1,000 a month. Child support is way too expensive and it's not needed. And a lot of times it ends up just being something that cripples the person who's paying it, often the man. and it really damages them to the point where they're not able to really do anything. Now, some of those other reasons that I said that I wasn't going to get into, I'm actually going to probably dip into them a little bit close to the end of the video. But what is one of the main things that I think goes behind the mind of the government when it comes to this? One of the things that I think is a common thing across the board, regardless of, who you are, what background you are, anything, that is, I think the government's mentality is understanding that there's a structure to the old household style where people were a little bit more logical. They worked together. They understood the family, the good of the family had meaning. I think we're in a place now in society where a lot of times relationships don't really last long. And what happens is, I think, because men are at the short end of the stick. So what I'm going to say is going to be a little bit more towards one side and not towards the other side in terms of men versus women. And the reason for that is because of the way we see it played out. You don't see the government giving men full custody and making the women pay child support. So we're going to talk on it by or from the perspective of what's actually happening. I think that because women are emotional and women are there, you could see happening in society. I'm not going to say that there's studies, though I'm sure there are studies done. You could see happening in society where if a woman is left to her own, and because women are more emotional and more impulsive when it comes to spending habits and things like that, you're going to see, even by men who are dating women or know women who are single as friends, stuff like that, have a harder time managing their money and managing their life. When they're with a man, it helps because that man helps manage their life. And if they're willing to kind of let that man manage the money, most men, I'm not talking about the bad guys, the player types and this and that, those ones who are always whatever. I'm not talking about that. And that only encompasses a very small percentage of men. The truth be told, there's a very small percentage of men. Anyone who knows that that's true. The majority of men are very responsible with their money. They have to be. They don't have a choice. So with that being said, when women are with guys like that, they know, the government knows that the guys will take care of them. So that they're responsible for those women when it comes to any of, spending habits and this and that. The guy, in theory, will manage the household. Now that we're in a time frame where you have a lot more people more single, and they're separating early on when kids are at a young age, I think that it is not, that whole concept of child support is not for the purpose of taking care of the kids. It's for the purpose of taking care of the woman. And I think the government, that's what they want. And let me explain. Obviously, I just broke down you don't need that much to take care of a kid. And if that was really an issue, their focus would say, well, let both parents have equal time with the kid and there is no child support and you both have to just manage your time with the kid. And the court would deem that both parents are required to have that time. So it wouldn't even be a thing where women could say, well, this guy's a deadbeat, he doesn't want to take the kids. No, the courts would order him to take the kids, and they can do that just the same way they order him to pay child support. The difference is that I think that the court's mentality is, without a man to govern or supplement the woman's life after she has a kid, because you got to keep in mind, once she has a kid, the odds of her necessarily locking a new man down is harder. And I think their mentality is, it uses the kid as a way to say, now the man has to take care of her. Because let's flip the example and it'll make a little more sense of what I'm saying. If the government gave the child to the man, and now the man is not paying child support, but he's taking care of the kid primarily. If even the worst case scenario, if that man was getting child support from the woman, and there's a lot of women who are not necessarily stable out there, and this is not a knock on women, but sometimes there's a lot of women who aren't living that life in the way of holding down a career, this and that. You literally could do the statistics where you have a lot of men sometimes who are the breadwinners of the home, when the woman, not because she's trying to be like a homebody, raise the kids, but just that they were never really that type who was trying to earn their keep in general. And like I said, it's not about a knock on women at all, but it's just that you can see it in certain areas, certain locations, certain places where like they're not necessarily trying to do that, or even just looking at their finances. Say if they do have a good job, a lot of times you'll see a lot of women who are in debt, a lot of women who are just have spending habits. They're impulsive. They see something, they want it, they want to buy it. You see a lot of women nowadays who like to go on vacations all the time. I've seen this. I've seen this from people who I know. I've seen this from people who I don't know very well. I've seen this online. I've seen this all over the place where it's like, I would rather go on a vacation trip than say save up to buy a house. And like I said, it's not a knock on women, but most men are built differently than that. They're naturally the type who want to build up. And I'm not talking about the player type. So if women happen to jump into the comments and say something like, I dated a guy and he wasn't about that life. Most men that women date, and most women are dating the same guy, are not about that life, because those guys are the player types and they're with hundreds of women. I know, I've spoken to those kind of men. And so those guys are not doing anything, granted, but there are the majority of men are not like that. Anyway, we're getting a little bit off topic. So my point is, I feel that the government's view is, rather than have a bunch of women who's out there in the streets who can't take care of themselves, and it would look very bad for our country to have a lot of homeless women. They don't have a problem with homeless men. And if you look at the majority of people who are homeless, it's men, it's not women. You have a few women, yes. But if a woman has a child with a man, she will probably never be homeless. And the government will ensure of that by making sure the man takes care of that woman for many years to come, through the means of the child. And I think that is the point of it, so that there are not as many homeless women. And I think that if you take a man, like I said, once again, this is no shade on a woman, but the dynamic of a woman and a man are different. If you take a man and you take a woman and they both have no support from anybody in their life, there's no assistance, there's no anything, on average, the man will find a way to thrive, and the women will find themselves in a lot of debt as they get older, and a lot of times in a space where they're looking for someone to take care of them, which is how the dating world goes nowadays. This is just a fact. It's not me just saying it. Everybody knows. You have a lot of women nowadays who will say, I want to find a guy who can take care of me, pay for my bills, especially if she has kids. She'll say, I want someone who can take care of me, pay for my kids, pay the bills, this and that. And that's across the board. Though some races are less than others, it's still across the board in all races that there's always a good amount of that when you have a single mom, period, and she's not with the person who, the father of her kids. They're often looking for someone to help them, not just for someone companionship, and they don't need that person's money at all. So with that being said, now if you took that same dynamic and then said, well, imagine now that they had no assistance from the man, or you take the kid from them and the kid is now with the father, and the woman now has to be on her own. If by 35 years old, most women do not own their own home who are single. Say if they're single and have no kids, they don't own their own home. Their finances are not very good. They often don't have a great retirement plan outside of their job, let alone if they have a job that even has a retirement plan. But if it does, they're never thinking outside of that box. So with that being said, most of them with their finances all over the place, when it comes to the time of them, say hitting 55 years old, most of them are not in a financially good place. Most of them are struggling. That used to never be the case many years back, because a lot of times you used to have the family dynamic was a strong thing. Now that it's weak, we're in the kind of first generation of really seeing people who are hitting their 50s, where women and men are no longer together. So now you're seeing the effects of that. The reason why you're only just starting to see some women who are getting to that point and they're older and they're like trying to see if they can make it. If you're single and you were the type who had a good job, you did your thing, you probably were okay. A lot of those women are making it to that age, and those are the ones who are trying to show the representative of that. But the women who went and had kids, or a lot of them sometime went and had kids early on, and they weren't that kind of in that position of doing well and work this and that, they were compensated and taken care of by the children's father through child support, which at a certain point that fades away. And then you start seeing a lot of the women, unless they remarried, don't really, you see them. They're in places where things are not going well for them. Like I said, this is not about any kind of shade or anything like that. It's just pointing out the facts of what you see out there with your own eyes. Men see this, women know this as far as having kids and that they're getting child support. Now, whatever the reason is, they're going to say like, yeah, it deserves to be that way. That's getting away from the point that I'm trying to make, is that child support is actually way too much. And I think the reason, like I said, is geared towards the government wants the men who have children with women to continue to take care of those women so they will not be on the streets, homeless, or anything of that sort. I think that's part of their plan. Now, the deeper thing that I was going to get into after the fact was that I do think sometime that whole concept is also geared towards destroying families. The way the government tries to jump in and do this whole plan in the first place is to destroy family structures, is to incentivize the women to get rid of the man. So that way, even if they don't want the man around just on a whim, they're just not feeling him anymore. Maybe they're tired of not having to work things out. They have an option just to get rid of the man, and the government will make the man pay. That is, I think, the deeper thing, and that's a discussion for another time. But once again, like I said, this all kind of really comes down to the fact child support is too much. And with that topic looming around with Trump about women not getting to use the children for writing off for taxes and claiming them on taxes, whether that's true or just a rumor, it definitely brought up a touchy subject in terms of the reality of how much men are hurting from having to pay way too much money, an over amount of money for children that do not require that much money to be taken care of. In addition, it brought to light for all the people who had a problem with it, the reality of how much they are benefiting from double dipping with claiming taxes as well as getting the child support. What are your things? What are your thoughts, you guys? Tell me, leave them inside the comments. I would love this to be a deep discussion in the comment area. So let me know, you guys. In addition, if we have enough comments, I will definitely expand more on this topic and let us kind of really dive further into it based on the comments that you guys say. As always, you guys, like, share, comment, subscribe, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.